Yo guys, what's up? My name is the Judge Prime, the ITK, here again with another video, but I basically just wanted to talk about Beanie Sigel's comments regarding Meek Mill, DC4, and my thoughts generally on what's going on with Meek Mill the past year. I know it's a little bit late to kind of be talking about the beef and everything, but I thought why not just talk about it, especially because Beanie Sigel's appearance on Taxstone was released today, and also because of DC4, which is incoming, which I'll probably have a review for in a couple of days after its release. So Beanie Sigel was on Tax Season podcast. Basically, in a nutshell, Beanie Sigel had elaborated on how he had sort of aligned with Meek Mill and then spoke into the game, found out that it was mainly because of the fact that in the initial diss that Game had made towards Meek Mill, he had sort of given Beanie Sigel praise, and then Beanie Sigel sort of fired at the Game, and then the Game fired back, and Beanie Sigel had a conversation with the Game. So he also went on to talk about a personal conversation which he had with Meek Mill about Nicki Minaj, I'm assuming, and he had basically told him, you know, this is your own private matter, you shouldn't be telling me these kinds of things, you need to handle your private affairs properly. He had also talked about how Meek Mill is sort of the bitch in his relationship with Nicki Minaj, and that's why he is so hard on women, and also given something which a lot of people had assumed about the Drake Meek Mill beef, saying in essence that the beef, in his opinion, started because Mill had asked Nicki Minaj if she had indeed slept with Drake, and then Nicki Minaj was unable to give him a reasonable answer or a satisfactory answer, and that's what sort of facilitated this whole beef situation. He also went on to give some advice to Meek Mill, saying that he should sort of create a record label, in essence, basically do what artists such as Rick Ross has done with MMG, what Drake has done with OVO, and should sort of create, you know, a Dream Chasers record label that the people around him should create their own money, and he should create something that will give him money once this music thing sort of dies out. I would say that Beanie Sigel really did give him fatherly advice. I think especially telling him, you know, you need to create a record label is definitely fatherly advice. I had always wondered why Meek Mill had sort of this movement in Dream Chasers that wasn't really moving anywhere, if I could say. It was a movement that isn't really moving anywhere. It's basically just saying, you know, Dream Chasers. But what did the Dream Chasers really do besides, you know, hang around you and party with you and tell you what you want to hear? So within the past year, we've sort of seen how tactical Meek Mill is and how, you know, how strategic he is. And I would say definitely within Meek Mill's camp, he needs to get rid of the entire majority of the people in his camp, because they seem like yes man. There doesn't seem to be anybody who is sort of mentoring Meek Mill or sort of advising Meek Mill, yo, you don't need to be saying these kinds of things, yo, you don't need to be making these kinds of comments. Because despite the fact that you are a musician and you rap that real shit, you also need to be strategic in this ever-changing music scene. And I think that's something where you look at Drake and you see how successful Drake is. It's because he's able to not just strategize, but adapt rapidly to the ever-changing scene and sort of either be on a wave or start a wave. And that's what Drake has done for the past 6-7 years, which has kept him relevant. I think Meek Mill definitely needs to get rid of the yes man in his camp and get people who can advise and structure his movement to make him seem like a very credible artist, because now nobody really takes Meek Mill seriously. Obviously that whole Twitter fingers stigma is going to stick for a while, because Meek Mill has sort of shown himself to be that kind of person. He responds so easily to provocation, and it's not necessary. Any artist can come out and say something about Meek Mill, or any individual can say something about Meek Mill, and he will easily respond. It's not necessary. Sometimes you just ignore things. You don't need to show. And it reflects, because if you had people in your camp telling you, yo, you don't need to be making these comments, you wouldn't see Meek Mill constantly catching them L's, as they say. I think Meek Mill needs to get maybe a management team, I don't know, but a group of people who really advise him, who really tell him, you don't need to be doing this, you need to be more strategic with your movements. Definitely with the whole DC4, I am eagerly anticipating to see what Meek Mill can do with this. I still don't think Meek Mill is dead. I think that if he comes out with a good body of music, he can definitely, create something or fire up the engines back on his side. Now, moving on to his Dream Chasers team, I think he really needs to create a record label, something that he can eat off. Eventually his raps will die out, people will get bored, that's just a matter of fact. So he should create a record label, maybe call it DC, get these people from Philly, put them on, and create something that he can continue to be a boss, just like Rick Ross, just like Drake, just like Lil Wayne and Birdman and so on. The list is endless. But create your own team. Now on to the thing about Drake and Nicki Minaj and blah blah blah. If that is really the case, then it just shows how sensitive Meek Mill is, and there's nothing wrong with being sensitive, but like I said, be strategic with the way you handle things. The reason why Drake won that beef wasn't necessarily because he was the better rapper or because he was more popular. Drake was able to manipulate what Meek Mill had going for him in the first instance, which was social media. In the initial, when this beef first came out, when Meek Mill first tweeted out those infamous lines that Drake doesn't write his own bars or whatever, what happened initially was that people were actually on Meek Mill's side, but Drake was able to manipulate that and sort of turn it around by dropping Charged Up and following in quick succession back to back. Now, the whole, I waited for you 4 days, in rap beef that I've seen, there is no time limit for when you can respond. You've seen artists respond maybe a few months later, a year later. In fact, look at Drake and Kendrick. When Kendrick did the Control verse or whatever, or the BET freestyle, Drake didn't respond initially. He responded in his album on songs like The Language. It took him a while. So I think if Meek Mill had been more strategic when he tweeted that, perhaps had, just a few lines ready so that if Drake responds, he would be able to fire back immediately. You saw what he did with War Pain, I believe, when Drake dropped Summer 16, and Meek Mill responded immediately, or in fact within a space of 30 minutes. That sort of cast a shadow of doubt on Drake, because people were like, whoa, that happened really quickly and you were very strategic. I think if Meek Mill had done that early on, the entire narrative now would have been very different. So I think going forward, and I know Meek Mill is probably not going to see this, but just my own thoughts, I think going forward, Meek Mill should take the advice of Beanie Sigel, and what Beanie Sigel said, I think, was the complete truth. He spoke to him as an elder, he spoke to him as someone who's a very seasoned veteran in this game, and basically said, don't make my own mistakes, make your own team, make your own money, and don't be under something, sort of branch out and create something. And I'll leave a link in the description to the tax season podcast. Be sure to listen to it. I think he dropped a lot of information there that is useful not just for Meek Mill, but for the general public and for hip hop fans. So definitely going forward, I would love to see Meek Mill, get his shit together, get a team that really advises him, gives him constructive advice, and he himself needs to listen to this advice and not just think that he can do it all. He's still young, he's still going to make mistakes, and that's perfectly fine. But I think having a team around you, a very professional team around you that can help you with these kinds of situations would definitely help. I think going down the line, Meek Mill, as DJ Academics has said, needs to go vegan. He needs to stay away from beef because it's not looking very good. He was going at Drake, he went at 50, he went at the game, and in all these scenarios he has lost. I think now he needs to focus on just his own music, creating his own thing. So far, he doesn't seem like that kind of strategic person, but I'm sure he has the money to invest in a dope management team, which can definitely steer his business moves in a more, constructive manner. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Did you listen to Tax Season's podcast? What's your input on this issue? Looking forward to DC4. I hope he comes with that energy. I hope he comes with a few bars here and there. And I don't think it's necessary at this point to go at the beef. When Drake dropped Charged Up, he should have had a song ready. If he had done that the same way he did with Warpaint is hard. Warpaint sits there with back to back. If he had done something on that level, perhaps I'm thinking the entire narrative would have been different. Forget that whole, Drake is more popular. The entire narrative would have been different if Meek Mill had responded in time. But hey, like I said, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you're new around here, why not click subscribe? My name is Judge Prime. I hope you have a blessed day and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.